I'm at a game store in Toronto and I'm looking for something.
It says I got a single copy. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to see if I can find it.
I'm looking for 2014's South Park, The Stick of Truth. It's a role-playing game set in the South Park universe, developed by Obsidian Entertainment and published by Ubisoft. I don't like shopping for pretty much anything, groceries, clothing, but the one thing I don't mind shopping for is video games, even though I get bad news here.
But it doesn't look like we have it here. It's heartbreaking.
I tell the cashier that I'm heartbroken by the news, but I'm not heartbroken.
Sorry about that, man. I think we're out of luck here today.
If anything, I'm excited.
19 for less to showing for one.
Because now that this store does not have the game, I have an excuse to go to another game store.
Are you looking for a PS4?
If there's PS4, I would prefer that.
Yeah, I'm looking for the Stick of Truth or Factory of Holes.
Stick of Truth.
All right.
And once again, I get more bad news,
So I don't have it.
which isn't really bad at all.
But let me see some of your boxes. Oh, actually, it turns out the Eaton Center, it looks like they have a copy.
And so I move on.
Hey, I didn't know you still worked here. It's the South Park game, Stick of Truth.
Oh, on which system?
PS4, if you have it.
We only have the fractured pedal, unfortunately.
I just thought for sure that you guys would have it.
I know. I wish we did.
So I leave the vintage store where I thought for sure they're gonna have it. And I've got one more place I can try before I head home.
You're on PS4?
PS4, like that's my preferred, but Xbox One is also fine.
I definitely got it for PS4, brand new.
Do you really?
Yeah, I do. Let me see.
Okay, cool.
You can obviously hear the disappointment in my voice. I like going on the quest. I like being on the quest more than I enjoy actually finding the treasure that I'm looking for. Once I've found what I'm looking for, then that's it. I have to go home. And then I get what I've come to realize is the real reason why I love going to game stores as much as I do. I get a big, satisfying chunk of conversation.
I'm about 50% on it right now.
Yeah.
Loving every minute of it. I was trying to be an asshole the other night and try to find something wrong with it.
These are real people, people who talk to gamers all day, every day.
Game of the year right
I've
now.
learned to love hearing their perspective on things. On today's show, we're going to meet two people who met and became a couple while working behind the counter of a game store in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And we're going to learn how South Park, The Stick of Truth, fits into their lives. Welcome to Heavily Pixelated.
My name is Sarah.
And I'm Dave.
When we first met, I was 17 and he was 19. We worked at EB Games together. That's how we met. And
Oh yeah. And it's
so,
funny because
yeah,
the story the way
you
we
went to
both
my
got.
18th birthday party, but we didn't start dating right away. We were
No.
friends for a long time,
For a
and
long
then
time.
eventually it turned into something else.
You were working at EB Games because, like, the way I understand that is like you.
Oh, it was my
wanted that
dream job.
Yeah,
as
me,
a 17-year-old.
I had just got fired from a grocery store, and I was like, "Well, I need a job," and I'm driving past this store. Slide that resume in, like.
Who asked who out? Like, when did you guys decide this was going to work?
Oh, that's a complicated
That
mess
is
of a
a-
story.
I think I asked you out, and I got turned down multiple times.
Yeah.
And then then we went out for a while.
It wasn't really a clear-cut.
We're
One
going-
person asked someone out and then you start going out, as it happens when you're friends for a long time, and we were dating other people too.
Yeah.
So, and then,
You complained about the people you were dating, about how they weren't doing what you wanted them to do? Or
I think I heard some of that from you. I didn't
Absolutely
really.
from me.
I didn't really complain. But
You didn't complain, but I certainly was. I was kind of like, well, no one wants to like commit. That's fine. I'll just date a bunch of different people, and Sarah was easily the best one. Our relationship really started to turn into something when we both went halfers on buying an Xbox 360.
yeah.
And we said we wanted
That's
two
commitment
games.
right there.
Yeah, so I was like, this was for me, this was a huge deal because we were living. She was living at her dad's. I'm living in my apartment with my cousin, my roommate. You know, let's split that. I'm like, okay, we're gonna split this. This is a big deal. Like, oh man. And I'm like, all I care about is I want to play Oblivion. And she wants to play Dead Rising. Like, this should work out. Sarah starts playing Oblivion, and she's playing it all the time because I'm working multiple jobs during the summer, And you had some more
I-
time off than I did.
Yeah, I think we were both in university.
Yeah, we
but-
were, but I was at the summer and I had to work because I had the co-op job and I had part-time jobs as well. And so I'd go over to her place all the time, and I'm like, can I play Oblivion? Meanwhile she's like fighting all these things. I'm like, well, at least I'll sit in here and watch, you know. And like that was
I'll watch you play.
Yeah, watch to play the game. The only game I cared about was throwing all this money at. I guess I'll just watch because I guess that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So that's where it kind of started a lot of it, and
you can actually see in our collection how we have doubles of a bunch of games,
Yeah.
and then you can tell when we got together because we only have one copy of
Doubles
them.
go away.
yeah.
So the way I play games is pretty, like I go into every possible corner, nook and cranny. I loot every single box available. I talk to every single person multiple times just to make sure they don't say something, they might say something different the second time. Dave is not that kind of player.
I'm not.
So if anything, he would say probably like, can we move on, please? Like we've been in this area talking to everyone, looking at every single object for like an hour.
I work 12 hours a day. This is my break.
Yeah.
And yes, I get it. The cat lady still needs that whatever she's looking for.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Sometimes she'd get tired of playing because she'd be like 9 hour session or whatever. She was exhausted from playing. So I'd be like, oh, this is my turn. So I'd take the game and I would play her. I'd like make a save. But I would just do this dumb stuff. Like I just like, oh, okay, I'm going to get your character. I'm going to like take all of my clothes off, throw them onto a roof, and I'm going to like kill all of the villagers if I can and just see what happens. Naked in the game with a knife and just stabbing random. Sarah would come back and, what did you do? I'm like, look at all the clothes I got. And she's like, what? Why did you do this? Like, there's all these naked people. What's going on?
In the fall of 2013, we had just gotten back from Penny Arcade Expo. We had decided that we were going to try and have a baby. PAX was kind of a last hurrah that we were doing before, real life started.
This is the last really cool thing we're going to do as single people as like not parents. Let's go do something really crazy. And it was a totally crazy experience. And it really lived up to our expectations.
The pregnancy was pretty, quote unquote, normal. I had minimal morning sickness. All the blood tests came back normal. All the ultrasounds came back normal. The only thing that was in any way unusual was that based on how she was positioned, it made it hard for me to feel any movement. Again, all the doctors, everyone told me, oh yeah, that's just how she's positioned. That's totally normal. Don't worry about it.
It was all playing out like I've seen on TV and movies. You go and you decide to have a baby, then you go have one, and then I guess the next step would be you just become a parent.
Yeah. Near the end of March, I had just a regular doctor's appointment. It was going to be my last doctor's appointment with my family doctor before transitioning over to an obstetrician. Everything was going fine up until my doctor tried to hear the baby's heartbeat. And he was trying for a while, and finally he stopped and he said, okay, I'm going to get you to go to fetal assessment at St. Boniface Hospital because I'm having trouble finding a heartbeat.
I remember driving to the hospital, playing out that typical scenario of this is the part where the audience gets scared during the pregnancy, and like, oh, what's going on?
On the way there, I thought, okay, this will be okay. This probably is nothing, but maybe it's something. We get into fetal assessment. I lay down. They start the ultrasound. I could see the screen from where I was laying, and she looked around for only a couple seconds, I think. And then I remember very clearly her saying, I'm sorry, I'm not finding a heartbeat. I just kind of went into shock. The first thing I did was call my boss at work. I told her that my baby didn't have a heartbeat, so I wouldn't be back to work today, but maybe I would be able to make it in tomorrow. The second thing I did was call our real estate agent because we were trying to buy a house and offers were being accepted that day. So I called him to say, my baby doesn't have a heartbeat, so we're at the hospital, but I still really want to buy that house. So, don't forget about us. We want to buy that house. Then I turned to Dave and I told him that I was sorry.
Of this whole time of this all happening with Tugboat, I only have very specific memories that are clear. Everything else is very mushed together. There is no concept of time in this timeline for me. It's just these intervals, these specific things occurred where there's a heavy amount of emotion. And I remember hearing that and looking at a wall beside me, like looking down, trying to keep my shit together. And you just saying over and over, I'm so sorry, I'm sorry. And I just said, it's not your fault.
The nurse came back and she sat with us and kind of explained what was going to happen next. I could either go home and wait for labor to start on its own, or they could induce me. I was about 32 weeks along, so it was going to be a whole regular labor and delivery. I also remember that she told me something that stuck with me for a while. She said that sometimes life deals you a bad hand, and all you can do is play it. That kind of was comforting to me in the moment. That was, of all the things that people told me, that it wasn't my fault, that, all the things that, people say to someone who's grieving. Oddly, that one stuck with me the longest and helped the most. What some random nurse that I don't even remember her name told me. One other thing that I feel like we should maybe clarify before we go further is the name Tugboat. Because if we continue to use that, it might be a little confusing. So when I was pregnant, people were all asking me what name we had chosen. And Dave and I didn't quite we wanted to keep that for ourselves until the baby was born. But we kept getting asked all the time. One day at work, we were all brainstorming ridiculous names. And a friend came up with the name Tugboat. I think it's from a TV show, but I can't remember for sure. So I told that to Dave as a joke. And so from then on, we just called her Tugboat.
Whenever someone
would ask, we'd say, oh, her name is Tugboat, and then leave it at that. And they'd be a little confused. And it was our little inside joke. We chose to be induced mainly because I couldn't stand to go home and just wait. I felt like that would just, I guess, how do I say it? I would fall apart if I just went home. I just needed this part to be done. I knew I couldn't even start the grieving process until after that was finished. And so I wanted it done right away. So we got admitted. Thankfully, they put us in a private room. If your body isn't ready to have a baby, which generally at 32 weeks it is not, it takes a really long time.
Just to be clear, when Sarah points out that we found out that Tugboat didn't have a heartbeat, and then we had to go through what you would call a normal delivery. You go to triage, you sit with all the other people having babies, you go into the baby delivery unit, you do all of that stuff except, and I'm supposed to be the dad that sees the other dads out at the hallway trying to get stuff together, and I just don't have a baby that's alive.
Yeah.
So it's the normal mechanics, but not the normal experience.
I had a lot of visitors come in, family. My mom flew from Guelph. People were visiting us. I
had no visitors in the hospital. I think I may have left the room when your family and people came in because I didn't want to see anybody.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I was also, people weren't focused on me.
In my case, I was spending most of the time just trying to convince everyone that I was okay. I was still in shock, mind you, so, I was making jokes. I was talking to people. People would ask if we were having another baby after this and if we were, planning to get pregnant again. And I would say, yes, definitely. And
they were asking you this at the hospital?
Yeah. Maybe don't include this part in the podcast.
I don't think I would have handled that well.
I was really focused on making sure that I guess everyone knew that I was okay, that I was going to be okay. And I don't know if that was just me trying to convince myself that I was going to be okay, or if, I don't know. I went into labor, delivered her. It was very surreal and pretty awful. Like, I knew that, you know, you go to the hospital to have a baby, you go through labor and you go through the delivery process, and everyone tells you that it's painful and it's hard, but at the end you get to hold your baby and your life is changed forever. And I knew that I was going to have that pain and the hardship, but at the end of it, I wasn't going to have my baby. And I didn't realize how truly awful that was going to feel. They had told me that I would get the option of holding her. I wasn't sure whether or not I was going to be able to. It felt like I was balancing on the edge of a cliff, and if I wasn't very careful, I was gonna fall and never be able to get back up. I remember delivering her, and there was no noise. The room was completely silent. They checked her, and I think they left pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they took her to...
They did. They took her to get her ready.
Yeah. They asked if we wanted to see her, and I said I did. In that very moment, I felt like I could handle that. And so they brought her in, and they asked if I wanted to hold her, and I knew I couldn't. I wanted to see her, know that she was real, but holding her, it was just going to be too hard for me at the moment. I've thought a lot about whether or not I regret that decision, and I still don't. I think had I held her, it would have triggered something in me that I don't think I could have recovered from as quickly.
Most of my memories of this stuff is me sitting on the sideline trying to just keep it together. And this sounds kind of selfish maybe, but like the biggest thing that I remember was feeling very emotional and not being able to talk about it because no one wants to talk to the dad.
The next morning, we got the okay to leave if we were ready. And on the way home, we were talking about like what were we going to do when we got home. And I think I suggested going to pick up a game. I think that was my suggestion.
Yeah, it would have been. I wouldn't have suggested that. I was too messed up. We had just bought a house.
Yeah, that's true. We bought a house from the hospital.
I just negotiated a house while you couldn't come downstairs.
Yeah.
And that was pretty weird.
On the way home, we stopped at Walmart. We went in and walked to the video game area. It's pretty crazy to go from immediately delivering a baby to walking around anywhere. We walked to the video game area and we kind of looked through the glass shelves. I was looking for something that just kind of sparked my interest. We saw South Park, and that one, South Park and the Stick of Truth, I saw it and I'm like, okay, that's the one. Didn't even need to look anymore. It had just come out a couple weeks prior. We hadn't really kept up with watching South Park.
I do remember how ridiculous it felt having the emotional baggage that we were just carrying that was very fresh in our mind. Like, it was not even 40 minutes out of the hospital, and we're talking about South Park and the Stick of Truth and looking at a picture of Cartman dressed up as Gandalf.
Yeah. I was kind of going just purely based on instinct. It was kind of like, what do I need to do for myself right now? Myself and Dave. And we were the only two people in the world that I really cared about at that moment. Whatever we needed, that's what we were going to do. And then we got home.
The way our house was set up, you'd come in the back door and we had the nursery set up past the door.
Do you want me to tell it?
No.
No? Okay.
Just give me a sec. Oh. So the nursery was past the door. The nursery was past a hallway door, and it was kind of this communal. Think of it as a den. So we set up this den as a nursery, and we had Sarah's dad take down the nursery stuff because we didn't know what we wanted to do when we got home, and so he took down all the nursery stuff, and it was missing when we. And it was all gone, and I just lost it.
For the next week, we kind of were in this weird state where I don't think I changed out of my pajamas once. People would drop off food. We'd have a lot of visitors dropping off food, which was awesome because I wasn't going to cook anything. And honestly, if people didn't bring food, I don't know if I would have really eaten anything. And then there was the aspect of dealing with grief when there's two people who are grieving just as much, having to work through it yourself, but also be aware of the other person and where they're at, because I kind of learned through this that everyone grieves differently and at different speeds, it's a different process for everyone. So when I would be feeling a certain way and I couldn't assume Dave was feeling the same way, he might be still at a state where he didn't want to get out of bed, and I might be at a state where I really wanted to talk about it, or vice versa. I remember the time that it hit me, because it still hadn't hit me yet. One night, I woke up because I felt like the baby had kicked. I woke up with a start, and then it just kind of hit me all at once that, no, the baby hadn't kicked. You're not pregnant anymore. Your baby's gone. And I just started crying. So that was rough. South Park gave me something to focus on, take my mind off of the situation a little bit. It also gave us something to talk about that wasn't our daughter. We could talk about what was going on in the game. We could talk about...
we could laugh at the game.
Laugh at the game. We could talk about what we should go do next, because there were like lots of little side missions. And we could also collaborate together and work through any problems that we were having in the game.
One of the most underappreciated aspects of gaming is the fact that they are collaborative experiences. Sarah and Dave could team up during this period of intense grieving.
I don't think we really got stuck on any bosses.
We were
in
hunting those
particular.
little Pokemon doll
Oh,
things.
yeah.
I was really into that.
Yeah, you were spotting.
I was spotting them and searching them out before we left the dungeon and stuff.
We've always played a lot of games together. As long as we've been together, we've been playing games together. So it was also kind of just going back to something that was normal for us, that didn't involve our baby. When things got a little bit too hard to manage, sometimes you couldn't get it out of your head what had happened. It was kind of you're drowning in this feeling of grief. The grief was so overwhelming. Like I said before, I was just trying to be really careful to kind of let myself feel it slowly, not all at once. And I didn't want to have that overwhelmed feeling. I wanted to be present and I wanted to feel it, but kind of, I guess, on my own terms. Being able to play a game and focus on that for a little bit, and then think about our baby and talk about it a little bit, and then still have an escape to go back to, that meant so much to me.
For me, my grieving process is I want to laugh. I want to find a way to laugh. And I mean, I'll laugh at anything that I find. And South Park is so inappropriate, but it is so great at that. It's so, you can't not laugh at it.
The offensiveness and the vulgarity of South Park is also bizarrely unifying as well.
There was the part of the game, though, where, I guess spoilers, you go into an abortion clinic.
Yeah, the abortion clinic was pretty crazy.
And you fight a giant fetus. And I remember when we first came across that boss, there was some nervous laughter
Yeah.
where it was like, okay, how, like, on my end, I was like, all right, how's Dave doing with this?
And I just thought it was pretty funny. I'm like, wow, of all the games we picked to play, we found the only one with a dead baby in it, with a dead baby joke.
Yeah,
So that was pretty, in a weird way, it's kind of funny.
kind of. But then the rest of the fight was in complete freaking silence.
Oh, yeah.
It was a distraction. It was a much needed distraction where we could focus on something outside of the situation and focus on it together. It was kind of a relief. Like, just loading up a new game for the first time is always a little bit exciting because you never know what you're gonna, whether it's gonna be good or bad, but it's exciting either way. I was just really into it. Like, I could put all my attention on that, probably because I needed to latch onto something, but I latched onto that. Just like, okay, I need a break from talking about it. It's always nice to have people concerned about you, obviously.
Sure, nothing wrong with
but it definitely being like, I don't want to talk about this anymore.
So I don't remember starting the game.
Yeah.
I don't remember the intro, but the distinct thing I do remember, I was like, oh, it just took a break from it, was you had to pick your class. And he goes, like, you have to be fighter, mage, something, thief, or Jew. And it was and Carmen goes, oh, Jew, I guess we can't be friends then. And I just remember, all I remember was, like, looking up, seeing, like, oh, wow, they went, okay. Like, it's going to be one of those games. It is a South Park game.
South Park game.
But it's that moment of, like, that, it was, like, the first thing I really remember of going, like, taking, like, a complete, like, it just threw me back out of the pit of despair, and I can't talk to anyone about this. No one's checking in on me, and I'm just thinking, it just took me out of that going, like, holy crap, what the hell's that? And I just remember that going, okay, it was a break. That just brief moment, I just laughed at it, going, "This is so incredibly stupid. Nothing's off limits." That kind of comedy that you got to be able to laugh at everything.
Sarah and Dave walked me through the central story of the game.
Well, you're the new kid.
Yeah, you're the new kid.
Yeah.
It takes you in a whole bunch of different directions. So, like, at one point, you're helping Cartman and, like, that crew.
They're playing basically like Lord of the Rings in the neighborhood, right? So it starts off with that, and you have to get the stick of truth back because it gets stolen right at the beginning of the game, and then you have to fight the elves, which is like Kyle's group.
You have to recruit the girls to join on your side. The girls want to, in exchange for your help, they want you to infiltrate an abortion clinic to find out if one of the girls in their group has gotten an abortion, so they want you to get their files. The girls get the document back, but it's all in French, so you have to go to Canada to translate it. So you walk across the border, all of a sudden everything is kind of like it's old school
8-bit
RPG where you can see all the little towns. So you see Ottawa and you see Winnipeg, which was like, oh, Winnipeg's there.
Yeah, it was very exciting.
And I think there was Banff.
Yeah, Banff and Montreal. Montreal's
there
in there
too. And you can kind of see your character walking on this overworld map, walking around to the different towns. You can see enemies on the map that will run towards you, but it's all very like...
Everything's lo-fi. Like, the music's lo-fi, the people are lo-fi.
So implying that Canada is behind?
Yeah.
Not quite as
We're not
evolved as
the States.
US, yeah.
And I always loved the level of detail on it, because it was one of those things where you get up there and you've got all this money, you're like higher enough level, you have all this money, you cross the border, you go to these towns and they have really neat stuff that you can't buy in the States or in South Park, and you try to buy it and you have no Canadian money. And so you're like, and you go and convert it, and you lose a lot of money.
Yeah, you have to sell your stuff and get Canadian money and then buy it back.
What I remember from that game was that it was just like every episode. It starts out with like, hey, let's go get the stick.
Welcome to the shop. Can I interest you in my wares?
And it ends with this, I'm not even sure how we got here.
Best stay here in town. Those dire wolves can rip your anus apart in mere seconds.
And it's just, you're so lost, but it's great. You're entertained.
Well, I think about her a lot. I mean, at first it was all the time and all consuming, and now every year the hospital actually has a grave for pregnancy losses and stillborn babies. So once a year on her birthday, we go there and bring flowers and kind of take a moment. We talk about her occasionally. She actually, you know, our families bring it up occasionally in a very nice way. My mom actually got a stained glass custom made of a tugboat on the water. I was just out visiting her, and it's pretty nice.
It's still in the kitchen, like prominently above their nook.
Yeah.
It's like it's very prominent, this tugboat.
In the window, and it's
you'd never know unless you knew the story, right? Tugboat changed us in a lot. Like there's the sad parts, there's the sad story, and there's all that. But there's a lot of like really good things. I focus on that a lot because tell me clearly it still is, it makes me sad. I think you and I are as strong as we are today because of that.
Yeah. We both survived the experience individually and as a couple, and we definitely learned how to discuss difficult topics with each other and how to work through feelings in a huge way.
A couple years ago, Sarah and Dave very bravely got pregnant again.
I asked to be put on the induction list when I was on my due date. The way it works is you get put on the list, you wait at home, and then they call you at any hour of the day and they say, Kate, come now. And then you have to have your stuff ready, you rush off to the hospital. I was pretty good about my anxiety with my most recent pregnancy when I was working and like otherwise distracted. But when you're sitting around just waiting, the anxiety was building up and building up and building up. And one morning I woke up. It was on New Year's Day.
Yep.
It was on New Year's Day, and I couldn't remember if I had felt kicking overnight. And I just started to panic. And I was like, okay. And I tried to use the Doppler, and I was like, am I hearing the right thing? Because it's kind of tricky being able to distinguish your baby's heartbeat from your heartbeat. So I started to panic. I was like, I don't know, should I go to the hospital? Like, and Dave said, if you even have to ask that question, just go. So I drive there and I get into the triage area for the maternity ward. The woman's like, okay, so what are you here for? And I just burst into tears at the desk, and I started telling her, like, I'm 5 days overdue. I, have a prior history of stillbirth. I'm just really nervous. I don't know when the last time I heard the baby or felt the baby kicking. And they right away took me to a bed in the triage area, and they said, okay, first thing I'm going to do is let you hear the baby's heartbeat. After that, we'll worry about paperwork. They found the heartbeat right away, and they left me alone for a couple minutes to kind of get myself together. Afterwards, someone came in and was like, so you're on the induction list? And I said, yes. And I'm like, I'm still waiting. I understand there's, I'm not a medical emergency, so there's no reason why I would be bumped ahead of anyone else. And she said, I'll talk to the person in charge today and find out if we can get it going.
Yeah,
and they did.
Right? There you go. She's very brave. Here, pick up some raisins. Oh man, it's a lot of raisins. It's a big kid amount of raisins. You eat all those?
And now we have two amazing girls. One is 3 and the other is 7 months old. And I have the family that I really wanted. I'll never be able to say that my family is complete because it will never be complete, but I have an amazing family, and I'm grateful every day for that.
Hello.
This is Eric Fenstermaker. He is a game designer and a writer. He was the lead writer and the narrative designer on South Park, The Stick of Truth, and he works at Obsidian Entertainment. He's also worked on Fallout New Vegas, Neverwinter Nights, and the Pillars of Eternity series.
We just wanted to thank you, first of all, for taking the time today to say hi to us, but then also for the work that you put into South Park and The Stick of Truth. It really helped us through a pretty terrible time in our lives, and the writing was hilarious, and we really liked the game, so thank you.
That's really nice to hear. Thank you so much. That's the kind of feedback you very rarely get to hear in game development. Usually, it's about the things people you wish you did differently, right?
Yeah.
But that's really awesome to hear. I can't say we went into that game thinking we were going to do good for society, but I'm glad that it did some good.
Also, whoever's idea it was to put Winnipeg as a location in Canada. Again, thank you. We rarely get noticed, so that was pretty exciting.
Yeah. It was exactly what we needed at that exact time. It was a perfect time to just make light of a lot of stuff that was heavy on our shoulders, so it was perfect.
I'm so glad that helped out. For a while, I got to go around with Matt and Trey. We're working on Book of Mormon simultaneously. They were trying to launch the national tour as they were working on the game. These are like two of the busiest people you'll ever meet. And so I got to kind of travel around with them as they did this. And it was just a blast. You'd get up every day and we just kind of talk through ideas and pitch jokes and try to figure out where the story of the game was going. It was so much fun. I learned a ton from those guys. The teamwork was incredible, the way everybody kind of came together and figured out how to make a game out of a television show was a huge undertaking.
It really did feel like you were playing through an episode.
The rule of South Park is that nothing is off limits for comedy. There's just some of the most horrible things, the best horrible things you could laugh at are in that game. It was exactly what I needed to see, to just kind of take that heavy weight of all the stuff going on off my shoulders and just take a moment, and no matter how absurd and on the nose some of it got to, I laughed pretty hard, and I needed that. I really needed that laughter at that moment.
Hearing stories like this is the kind of thing that makes you get up and want to work in the morning. So this is really, really nice to hear. I'll try to relay the nice wishes to the rest of the team.
When I had my 3-year-old and she was just a baby and I was on mat leave, I went to go see a movie, one of those stars and strollers type movies. And I brought her along and I was waiting for friends to show up with their babies. And this older lady comes up to me and she says, "Oh, your baby's so sweet. Is she your first?" And I had gotten that question a lot. That's like the number one question that people ask a mom if she's out with her kids. My answer was always yes, because I didn't want to make people uncomfortable. And I knew that, based on experiences, talking about this thing is kind of taboo. No one really talks about pregnancy loss, and especially not stillbirth, because it's very sad. I would always say, yeah, it's my first, just to kind of not have to deal with that. This woman said, "Oh yeah, I have 5 sons at home and one that never made it home from the hospital." I kind of thought to myself, like, if this lady can come up to me, a total stranger, and share that part of her life, why am I lying to everyone about it? There are times where it's okay to share it and where it's not, if it makes someone a little bit uncomfortable, maybe that's not the end of the world.
Big thanks to Sarah Dietrich and David West for sharing their story with us. Sarah and David would like to encourage listeners to go to starlegacyfoundation.org. Star Legacy is a non-profit organization that's dedicated to helping people who go through exactly what Sarah and David went through. Go to starlegacyfoundation.org and click on the Donate Now button. Best way to reach Sarah is using her email, sarah-m-d@outlook.com. And if you want to connect with David, best way to do that is through his website, davidwest2s.com, or his Twitter handle, @davidwest, again, 2 S's. Thanks also to Eric Fenstermaker. You can find out what Eric is working on these days by following him on Twitter @TheEFenster. Thanks also to producer Sarah Deakins and technical producer Stephen Nikolic. music tracks in today's episode include Our Son the Potter and Nap Time by Blue Dot Sessions, Green Fields by Scott Holmes, and finally Glimpse of Eternity from Maidan. You can find all those tracks at freemusicarchive.org. I'm Scott C. Jones. I'll see you next time.